everybody, and welcome to the Intuitive Catalyst podcast. I'm Leilani, your host, and today we are joined with one of my favorite people in the world, once again, Dr. Miriam. Dr. Miriam is a thought leader, speaker, and the founder of Tipping Point Holistic Healing. With over a decade of experience as a board-certified pediatrician and global public health officer, she has a lifelong passion for nurturing children, which continues to influence her work today. After experiencing burnout, she developed her transformative From Burnout to Burn-Up coaching approach, guiding women from self-rejection to self-acceptance. A key aspect of her process is inner child healing, helping women integrate all parts of themselves and heal childhood wounds to step into their soul's purpose. Dr. Miriam teaches women to do this through the power of their consciousness. As a certified soul, purpose, and spiritual life coach, her mission is to empower women to reconnect with their true selves and embrace their authenticity, contributing to the shift of the planet's consciousness toward love, fostering a brighter future for both women and children. And when I think of Dr. Miriam, I just love her. And you'll see this. She and I are great friends. We just recently became fast friends. And her story from moving from the medical field in this highly revered place that she was to listening to her intuition to become somebody who is of service in a different way, but still centering healing. It is remarkable. I cannot wait to share this interview with you. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome Dr. Miriam to the podcast. Miriam, my love, how are you today?
So freaking excited.
Welcome to the podcast.
So exciting. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. Miriam and I have become quick besties in recent months, and I was so excited to have her on. I already knew she was doing some magical shit, and here she is. So, Miriam, the question that I start with always is, who are you? What is your big work in the world? And how do you source from your intuition to do your work?
Okay, beautiful questions. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. I'm so excited to be in conversation with a sister. I truly feel that. So thank you. Who am I? I am a divine human. I am really here to help people, women specifically, remember who they are, remember their sovereignty, remember their power, remember why they're here so that they can shine their light and live a life of purpose and also contribute to the shift in the collective consciousness.
Okay. And how does your intuition show up for you?
Oh, my intuition. My intuition, it shows up loud. It shows up like literally that's how it shows up. It shows up loud, persistent, constant. But it took me a while to really learn to trust my intuition, trust the guidance, trust the messages. It wasn't until probably, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, but really strengthened over the last several years. And now I just, it's like my buddy, and it shows up a lot for me in the way that I feel. So my feelings guide me a lot. And I'm clairvoyant, and also I am claircognizant. So I just know things and can see. Yeah, those are my strongest clairs, I would say. It would be my claircognizance, my clairvoyance, and my clairsentience over the last several years as well. And I feel like it opens up like in pieces. I don't know if that was your experience, but
Yeah. I definitely I cycle through the different clairsenses. It was super strong. My clairsentience was very strong for most of my life, to the point where I would be like absorbing other people's shit, honestly.
Right,
Like they're like, I just
right.
always feel better. And I'm like a wreck after. Like, I always feel better when I see you. And then I'm like taking their depression home with me. So yeah, clairsentience was really, really strong. But once I started down this path, it was like all of my gifts blew open, especially my clairaudience. So I was hearing a lot of messages, and then my clairvoyance. So I was seeing visions very, very strongly. And so it kind of cycles now between all of them. I would say the one that is at the most forefront right now is my claircognizance, which is not one that I had a lot of experience with and up until this
Interesting.
point. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting because a lot of the things that I've channeled for people who are claircognizant or who are deeply claircognizant is I'm starting to kind of recognize and embody those things also. So a lot of people who are claircognizant doubt their gifts really heavily because it's just this like drop
Yeah.
of awareness. It's like, I don't know how I know
Mm-hmm.
this. I just know this. And what I have told those people and what has I've channeled for them as I like had felt into their gifts, because I have the gift of feeling into people's gifts. It's like, no, you have just act on it, trust it. Don't delay. Don't like let your monkey mind come in and kind of
Get in the
talk you
way.
out of
Mm-hmm.
it. Um, and so I'm finding like, okay, I have to trust my gifts. I have to act on it and then kind of see the magic unfold later, if that makes sense.
Right. It
Which
does.
is different with like clairsentience. It's like I can be with someone and I can get confirmation right away, like, oh my gosh, like you know how I'm feeling. Yeah, that's it. You can feel it. Whereas
Right.
claircognizance, it's like the magic comes after the action almost.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely it's interesting. Yeah.
It's funny because you did an Earth Angel activation.
Mhm.
Um, you do those, I think, what, monthly or?
It's shifting. I'm going to be doing more like recorded activations because it became pretty taxing to do it so often, and it was kind of the same content. So I'm shifting to like doing more Earth Angel kind of like curriculum and doing it through eventually this is kind of a spoiler, but I'm eventually going to be doing it through Intuition Immersion School with Josette LeBlanc. And
Oh,
so,
fun.
yeah, so it's kind of shifting. I'm not going to offer as many live. I might go back to it if there's a large demand for people to be in my energy
Yeah.
real time. But yeah, but I remember you were in there. What was it, like a year
I
ago?
was in there, I think so, and you were talking about my claircognizance, and you were and talking about my doubt, the doubt. I don't even know if I can't remember if you were speaking to me directly, but I knew you were speaking to me directly, because there's so much doubt. It's like,
Mhm.
is that a thought? Is that a message? Really kind of discerning the two, and
Mhm.
you and I have talked about discernment in the past, and really discerning what your intuition is telling you versus something else. Your ego is a practice, and one that
Mhm.
I continue to practice every day.
It's a practice, and it's a muscle that I've had to build with my claircognizance. Is
Hmm.
It's like the trust. It's this kind of like the circular thing, because it's like, okay, the more I trust it, the more I get, like the more I'm trusting my claircognizance, the more information I'm getting. And it's almost like building a muscle. It's like working out that muscle. And then eventually it's like I have a
Absolutely.
drop of awareness now, and it's just like, oh, okay, and I just act on it. And it's become more easeful over time, but it definitely was something I had to really put intention behind. And what I'm finding is it's an energy saver for me personally, because the messages aren't
Hmm.
like this deeply embodied thing. Like I don't have to process it with the physical cells of my DNA. It's just this like, oh,
Right.
it's just an awareness and I act on it. So I'm finding that. So I'll give an example like clairsentience. It's like
Hmm.
I have to like feel the emotion first or feel the bodily sensation. I have to bring it up to my mind to process it. and then act on it. And that's not even taking into account anything that I would have like absorbed from someone else or whatever, but it's this like
Right.
whole energetic, like cellular process versus claircognizance is like drop of awareness. And I like, oh, act on it. I like create something on my website or whatever, walk away. And it's just, I've just noticed I've saved so much energy with having my
Faster processing.
claircognizance. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's like
Yeah.
faster processing time. Thank you.
Faster. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So Miriam, you have this like wild story about how you arrived to what you're doing because you used to be a medical doctor. Do you still consider yourself a medical doctor?
Yeah, I consider myself a doctor, but I haven't practiced clinical medicine in over 7 years.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, and I, kind of grappled with that a little bit as I went along my journey, as I sort of started looking at the different roles and the titles and everything that had led me to that point. And I feel like there's this natural process that I think probably a lot of people go through on the spiritual path where you sort of just want to be completely detached from everything that you were before that point,
Mm-hmm.
and which is just sort of further rejection of who you are, right? Because it's still a
Yeah.
part of
It's still who you
you.
are.
And yeah, absolutely. So I went back and forth, but ultimately a doctor is a teacher. The root word of doctor comes from um, the teacher, and that resonates with me very much. So yeah, I still consider myself Dr. Miriam, and that's how I put myself out there on social media. And so that's the long answer to your short question.
Well, so tell us about your path, your spiritual awakening. Like you've
Sure.
given us a little bit of context, but tell us what led you to this work you're doing and tell us a little bit about your particular magic in medicine today.
Sure. So my spiritual awakening started in 2019. I was before that, I had, gone down the path of becoming a medical doctor ever since I was a kid. Um, I would always say that I wanted to be a pediatrician. I had this deep knowing that I was here um, to keep children safe, to protect children. And so how that translated in my mind at the time, in my culture, in my setting, right? Because I think that plays a big part as well. Was, you're either a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, they're these kind of top professions. And so out of those, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to become a child doctor. So I would always say I want to be a pediatrician, um, even though I had other loves and passions at the time as well. But I was on this track to being a pediatrician. And so I went through, college and med school and residency, and still like the Gemini in me, which I love all things, I loved all parts of medicine, at the time. I loved internal medicine, I loved OBGYN, I loved internal medicine, like all of it. So I really gave myself the opportunity to explore each of the different specialties like full heartedly, even though I came in knowing I wanted to do pediatrics. I was like, maybe I'll change my mind because I do that a lot too. So,
Gemini.
yeah, totally. And it drives people crazy, but it's one of my mottos now. I tell people like you can change your mind anytime.
Yeah.
So I went in and I purposely made my pediatrics rotation the last rotation of I think it's my third year. And then when I did it, it was like yeah, it was always peace. So I ended
Mhm.
up doing pediatrics, and but after that, there was still this feeling like I was always really drawn to global health and working with vulnerable populations. So, general pediatrics just wasn't going to cut it for me. It was like, I need more, I need to do more. And so I would travel to different places and get, international experience working with kids. When I was in medical school, I did that, working with orphans in Ethiopia who had HIV and AIDS, and serving as sort of their medical director of that orphanage. And it was such a beautiful experience. And then again in residency, I traveled to Nicaragua to provide primary care in the mountains and the rural parts of Nicaragua that where healthcare, the infrastructure wasn't great, access to preventive medicine wasn't widespread. So I had done that, and so there's always this pull to like go international. And so even though I finished my pediatric residency, I felt like, oh, I want to do more, and so that led me into a career in public health. And I ended up coming here in Georgia, where I am now, to Atlanta to work at the Centers for Disease Control as an epidemiologist, and which is basically like a disease detective, which is perfect for my like researcher archetype and my curiosity. I love to learn, right? So I ended up working in conflict settings, in war-torn settings, helping set up surveillance systems for diseases that affect mostly children, but obviously whole communities. So I was like a globetrotter. I just traveled around the world. It was very like high stress environment. And I just felt this like urgency and this need to like do more. And so I would just travel like all the time, and at the time when I joined the CDC, I was in the United States Public Health Service, which is like a uniformed service. I had to wear a uniform, which, if you know me, you can imagine how difficult that was. Mm-hmm. My only saving grace was that I was traveling a lot. And so when we traveled internationally, we weren't allowed to wear a uniform, which was great because I didn't really want to wear it anyway. Mm-hmm. So I ended up traveling a lot, and in that time got married and had a kid. And at some point I had to make a choice, between all this kind of humanitarian aid work, which I loved, and being present for my family and my newborn son. So I thought the best thing would be to go in the middle and find an international post where I could do what I loved and be with my family. So we ended up moving to Ethiopia in 2019, and that's sort of where my spiritual awakening really started. And it was beautiful and it was challenging being in that environment. I was still doing work with supporting the childhood immunization program there, and a lot of outbreak response work and emergency response work, which took me all over the country. So I was still traveling a lot within the country and working in a system that, how do I say this? It was the culture there is very much, and I lived there when I was young as a kid as well. You're taught like not to ask questions, not to question authority. You sort of take what you get for face value. So not a lot of like outside the box thinking. Mm-hmm. And also, given the fact that it's a low resource country in terms of the public health infrastructure and the health system, the workforce was just completely overwhelmed by what needed to be done. The constant state of emergency, the constant conflict, between different ethnic groups and fighting. And so war, violence, famine, disease outbreaks. There's a lot. And I really respect all the people that I worked with while I was there. I was working with the World Health Organization at the time. I respect them so much because they were really doing their best to um, to do their jobs, but they
Mhm.
also were given the impossible task of juggling like 15 different things at the same time. You know, one person had definitely like a 10-person job, if not more, you know,
It
constant.
it makes me like as I feel into that community, that culture, it feels like so what's coming through for me is that as like a collective and whatever collective, whatever culture we're in, that it has kind of this like hive consciousness almost like there's a consciousness
Hmm.
associated with the
Yeah.
people. And
Hmm.
if we can think of the people as like a human body, like the nervous system was shot, like there was so much
Totally
trauma.
shot.
Like when we think
Absolutely.
of and I'm feeling goosebumps, like because I know what it's like to be a survivor of like a ton of trauma and what that does to our nervous systems, what that does to us on a cellular level, but that's happening on like a cultural collective level. So not only is
Exactly.
every single person within that culture dealing with this like constant barrage of like nervous system dysregulation, it was also like the collective, and you were just in there like how the fuck, like what can I even do
What
here,
can I
like
even do? Right.
yeah.
I went in like so excited to like bring change, and they were super
Mhm.
open and welcoming of me. Um, but in the end, it's the system that they were in.
Yeah.
And then that's what I finally was able to see was, you know, maybe
Mhm.
this isn't the right time for me to be here. And
Mhm.
and also recognizing that I that's when I had this huge epiphany around education, and
Mhm.
which is why I'm so passionate about education now is, I mean, I've always been, but specifically, I saw how the adults that I was working with were simply conditioned based on the education that they had received,
Yeah,
based on
the
the
programming.
societal expectations.
Mhm.
Exactly. And so I couldn't really blame them. And it just hit me one day. I was like, it's the kids. Like it has to be the kids. If change is going to come, it has to be, we have to start with the kids and
Yeah.
education. And, you know, even the education system there is, you know, quite rigid, and what you're taught is, you know, very structured. And like I said, you don't really get to ask questions and think outside the box. So that is when, and then also years, you know, almost 10 years of all the education, you know, which was extremely stressful. You know,
Mhm.
I wouldn't say medical school was not stressful. It had its fun parts, but medical school residency, extremely stressful. And then all my emergency response work, extremely stressful. And then now living in the country, which I love the way you described it, you know, because I feel like that's exactly how it is. It's like this body that is experiencing repeated trauma and just can't get a break,
Mhm.
which is funny because as I say that, it was like the perfect place for me to have my awakening because
Mm.
I too was this body in this country that had experienced repeated trauma and chronic stress and just needed a break.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
that is what happened. Um, you know, and I had picked up all sorts of coping mechanisms that were not healthy, whether it was drinking, drugs, like you name it, you know,
Mhm.
and I just saw it all just came to a head. And um, I just started to ask, like, what am I doing? You know, it got really dark really fast. And it had been dark before, you know, like I definitely had, you know, anxiety, depression in the past and in that time as well. Um, so it wasn't new, but it was just like so the scale of it
Mhm.
was much bigger. It was like I couldn't ignore it this time. And I knew I needed a change in my life, and I just didn't know what that was. And
Mm.
I went to see this incredible nun who is in Ethiopia. And I remember she said something to me that I'll never forget. I think about often. You know, we were in a group with other people, and she sort of zeroed in on me and said, I get emotional thinking about it.
It's okay. Let it flow.
They told me I was gonna cry today.
Mm.
Um, you know, she kind of walked into me and said, you know, Miriam has a pure heart.
Mm.
You know, she has a pure heart. And I was so struck by that because I didn't, like, I knew that, but I didn't feel that I was that. If that makes sense. And because I knew that she could see, I was like, oh, I was like, she sees something. She sees it and she sees what I know to be true, but I just can't seem to somehow believe in, you know, like I knew it was there, but I just didn't believe in it. And so she was like a mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was this beautiful, gorgeous mirror for me. And that was honestly, that was the beginning. It was that moment. And it just takes one person to see you.
She's an earth angel.
Mhm. It takes one person to see you. And she saw me. And, and then I was just on this quest of self-discovery. And I was so committed. I was so committed to knowing that person
Mm-hmm.
that she saw that nothing could get in the way. Nothing.
Yeah.
So I delved deep, Leilani. I delved deep into spirituality. My family and I ended up coming back to the States in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, which
Mm-hmm.
again, perfect timing, you know, like a time where we're all like kind of isolated and forced to go inwards. And
Right.
I was um, so thankful actually for that experience, you know, because in the past, I had been such a perfect escape artist. You know, I had found ways to escape this process of discovering who I was.
Mm.
And there's no escape, you know, couldn't escape. And and so I really delved deep into spirituality, meditation, started meditating, um, you know, learning how, you know, how for me I could meditate and connecting with myself. And that's when everything just showed up,
Mm-hmm.
including my awareness about um, my childhood sexual abuse, just all bubbled up.
I know that feeling as a fellow like survivor of childhood sexual abuse. I know the feeling of running to stay safe or just like disassociating. Like I spent so much of my life not embodying my vessel, like not embodying my physical body. Uh, like I spent a lot of time in my 20s just like numbing with, I mean, drugs, alcohol, sex, love. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that I mean, there was just so many escape hatches that are available in this dimension that are
So
normalized
many,
even in this dimension
right?
for us to not feel into our bodies. And I took advantage of all of them, including like
Okay.
corporate, materialism, overworking, the matrix. Like I used the matrix as a way to numb and cope with the fact that I had never learned how to be in my body. I hadn't been able to regulate my nervous system. And like so
Right.
many parts of your story resonate with my own as well. Like it was so dark before it was light. Like it was so
Mm,
dark. I was in my deepest depression and anxiety leading up to my spiritual awakening in 2020. I was I just felt it was just really lonely. I felt so alone.
mhm.
Um and and I'm hearing in this moment and I'm channeling like that's with purpose because we have
It
to make
is.
choices in the shadows. We have to make choices in the
That's right.
darkness. Is this who we're going to be?
That's
Or
right.
will we choose to step into what the nun saw in you, this really divine being, and what she saw in you, which is like, you are the light.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's so interesting because, the numbing and the escaping, it's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy. And so I didn't think I was dissociated like at all. Like I've always been a joyful person.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a very happy-go-lucky person. And, like everything, there's the shadow and light, like everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the shadow to that is that it was also masking so much emotion, so much
Yeah.
deep pain
Yeah.
that I wasn't consciously aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also became part of my personality, right? And personality is it's so rigid. A personality is so rigid.
Mm-hmm.
This is just coming through now for me. It's like it's funny because most of us talk about our personality like we wear it with pride, like this is our personality. It's like who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to a point where I was like, oh wow, there's so much more
Mm-hmm.
that I am, first of all, but also that I haven't been able to see, and that is really when I learned what it meant to sit with my emotions.
Mm.
I would always hear people saying, you got to sit with your emotions, you got to sit with it. And, it kind of gets annoying after a while. And, I
Yeah.
think, I think at the beginning, like, I'm sure a lot of people can probably relate to this, especially if you're type A and like you're doing spirituality in a very type A way as well. Like you want to check all the
Which is
boxes,
just
right?
it's just
Like
a recipe for disaster. Like there
it is. It is a recipe for disaster, right? And it's like, okay, I will sit with this, but honestly, I just, I was just still, and I was reading all these books. I love to read. I was reading a lot of Richard Rohr, which I think we've talked about, a lot about like contemplative prayer and really just getting comfortable with being still. Because like I
Mhm.
kind of was alluding to in the past, I could never sit still. I was always on the go. I always had to be with other people. I could never be by myself.
Mm.
And through this work, my my healing work and the spiritual journey that I've been on, I started to discover why I couldn't sit still,
Mhm.
what I was running from, what it meant to really enjoy being in my own presence,
Mhm.
and how much fear had taken over my life. Because if you'd asked me, I would have been like, I don't live in fear. Like, no, I
Yeah.
don't.
You were so subconsciously bypassing with like it makes so much sense. We both were because
Right.
to actually sit with our feelings meant that we had to break. We would have to break. We would have
That's
to
right.
like be vulnerable. We would have to admit that we don't have our shit together. Like we would have to
That.
break. Yeah.
That's right. You have to break. And I want to speak to that because what we're conditioned to believe about breaking is that you are crazy. And I think
Especially
subconsciously,
women.
yeah. And I think subconscious, and I have family history of, psychiatric illness. And I think subconsciously, I had a fear that if I let everything go
Mm-hmm.
and let all the things that want to come up, that I would lose my mind and end up in a mental institution
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Same.
And I think that's the struggle, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the struggle that so many people face, that we've faced, is this fear of going crazy, looking crazy, because it's so opposite of the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just talking to my son about that word yesterday because he has ADHD, and somebody said, "Oh, you're acting crazy today." This was a while ago. And I actually spoke to that person and said, "Can you please not use that language around my son because um, he has ADHD. He also just has a lot of energy and needs to move, and I don't want him to be
It's such an
stigmatized for that."
word to use it in that context.
Right, right. And she was great. She was super apologetic, and she obviously didn't know, and that's what I love, is like being able to communicate with others openly, which I feel I can do so much more now without fear of creating
Mm-hmm.
conflict, and that's what I feel is being asked of us as a collective as well, is to be able
Mm-hmm.
to listen to one another, and she was genuinely apologetic, and I was like, it's great. But my son and I were talking about that word yesterday, and I said, what does crazy mean to you? Because if you mean crazy like wild and free and fun and unique, then yeah, let's be crazy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, yeah. And it means like, doing things different and like being wild. And I was like,
Oh.
yes, then let's be crazy. I'm like, let's take back that word,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because it's has so much stigma around the word. And so yeah, I was afraid of losing my mind.
I'd really love to know about the ways that you support the inner child.
Mm,
Like, so
okay.
I definitely like feel free to talk about your different modalities, but it's 11:11 here. And I remember you saying, like, I want to
Yeah,
insert like the inner child piece in my bio. So tell me about that. What does that mean to you?
sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So as I was on my healing journey of, healing my childhood wounds and my all the emotions that had been locked up for so long,
Mm-hmm.
one of the modalities that I used in my journey was plant medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So mushroom psychedelics. I also, did a lot of meditation and tried, you know, emotional freedom techniques, so tapping, so a lot of nervous system work, a lot of physical movement, so Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, I mean, you name it. But plant medicine was like a whole other level. It opened me up in
Mm-hmm.
um, on a whole other level, it allowed me to be able to see my trauma, to see my belief system, to see the structures that were in place, um, that sort of kept me disconnected
Mm-hmm.
from myself in a safe way.
Mm-hmm.
I developed a relationship with the medicine. Um, I deeply honor it. And while I was in that space, I would often meet my younger self.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I had one experience where, she was coming to tell me something, and I just really did not want to know what it was. And so I just was like, no, I don't want to know. At that time, I wasn't ready
Yeah.
for what it was. Since then, I met with her multiple times, and she has shared what it was, and I was able to hold it outside of the medicine, actually. So working with the medicine has allowed me to cultivate the medicine in myself,
Mm-hmm.
where because these are all tools, right? And so getting to a point where I don't actually need the medicine to be able to do my
Yeah.
own healing work, you know? And so a big part of my healing journey was working with my inner child. I had to go back and look at kind of the experiences that she experienced, the emotions that she felt that, she
Mm-hmm.
felt were too much. She felt she was too much. She felt like she couldn't speak up. She felt like she couldn't use her voice.
Mm-hmm.
She felt like she didn't belong here at all.
Yeah.
She felt like she couldn't be free and she couldn't just be that like fun, wild,
Very.
creative fairy that she was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to, and a big part of me not being able to access that part of myself was the dissociation. I
Mm-hmm.
was so disconnected because of the trauma, because of my nervous system response and the beautiful protection that our brain offers us in times of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know that I was disconnected from her. And so
Yeah.
I first had to create a safe space in my body in
Mm-hmm.
order for her and learn to trust myself before she would show up and be honest with me. So a big part of inner child healing is safety, like
Mm-hmm.
knowing that your inner child feels safe enough to even show up to do the healing work.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I didn't even trust myself. I would always
Mm.
second guess myself. So I had
Yeah.
to really learn how to trust myself. And it was through working with the plant medicine and other, you know, mind body practices to sort of regulate my nervous system that slowly she started to show up and she would tell me how she felt. And then I could learn how to really mother her again from this place, from where I was now.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized because I also did a year-long shamanic kind of healing program. And so with that and the plant medicine work, which is um, essentially working on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is that work. Um,
When you say both sides, what do you mean?
I mean the earth realm and the
And the
spiritual
spiritual.
realm. Yeah. And that is where I live, and
Mm-hmm.
that is where I work. And as I started to connect with my inner child and integrate her back into my body, bring her back into my body because she was not in my body.
Mm-hmm.
I started to understand how important sort of this work is,
Mm-hmm.
this inner child healing work, where you literally have to go back in time and meet that younger version of yourself, versions, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
and reparent them back home to
Yeah.
yourself, to your soul, to your heart. And so once I was able to do that for myself, I started noticing when I started my coaching practice, I started noticing that every single session I would have, I would end up doing inner child healing work. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I was so confused because I did not think that that was going to be a big part of my work. But
Right.
every single time it would show up. And then
Mm-hmm.
and then I would joke and say, I work with children in other realms now. I went from
Mm.
pediatrics it's always been about the children, always. My work has always been about children in some form or another. And now here I am. And, I had this beautiful meditation once where I saw, because I believe everything that we're seeing playing out on the world stage is a bunch of wounded children.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that if we can heal our inner child and truly embody the love that we are, that we can start to see peace and love and unity on this earth, and so
Yeah.
it would just keep coming up. It would come up in all my coaching sessions, and I was like, I see what you're doing, spirit.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's powerful, and so I'm really committed to continuing to do that work and supporting women through that work in a safe space, because safety is number one, especially for
Mm-hmm.
those of us who've experienced trauma, which I would venture to say all of us have experienced it to some
At
form.
some point, right?
Everybody, right? Every single person, it's um, let's not make trauma another thing that kind of divides us, you
Right.
know. Like we've all experienced trauma, we've all experienced pain and suffering. And so, but the safety piece is so important. If you don't feel safe enough to let go,
Hmm.
you won't be able to do the healing work. And so, yeah. And
I have
then,
a
yeah, go ahead.
question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
I thank you so much for just sharing all of your story and sharing. It's so beautiful and vulnerable. So so the listeners are here hearing you recount your story. What do you want them to know about reconnecting with their inner child? What can that look like for them? Because I'm sure they're like, okay, that sounds great. Like, how do I do that?
Right. So one way is to work with, a facilitator or a guide, like myself, um, that can help you journey back in space and time to meet those parts of yourself. But another way that is really simple and that everybody can do at home is to like just sit and journal and try to remember what you used to love to do as a kid. What did you
Mm-hmm.
love to do? What were you passionate about? Did you love to be in nature? Did you love to dance? Did you love to sing? I used to love to dance and sing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, did you love to draw? Like,
Yeah.
what was it? Most people can say, when I was a kid, I was always out in the woods barefoot, or
Yeah.
I used to love to sing, put on performances, whatever that is. And I'd say, do that, do those things. It's a beautiful way to honor your younger self and to start to build a relationship with especially if you've been so disconnected from yourself for so long.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful way to start to cultivate that relationship again, to create safety so that when it
Mm-hmm.
is time to do the healing work, to step into the shadows and do some of the quote unquote harder work,
Mm-hmm.
that they will feel safe to do that with you. So that's a couple ways to do
Yeah.
that.
I have so much to say about this. It's like bursting out of me. So,
Let it out.
I
Let it
know.
out.
So I do a lot of work with what I call radical authenticity, which at the
Hmm.
core is simply like, what does it mean to be closer to our soul self in this physical experience? And
Yep.
there's an exercise that I do and have done with groups called just like what's always been true for you. Like what has always been true for you. So journeying back to when you were 5 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old, what is true in all those times. And what's funny is, and I just have goosebumps, like what's always been true for me is I was a writer. I've been a writer since I could hold a freaking pencil. And
Hmm.
I've told the story before, but when I was like in the summer before uh third grade, I think it was, I wrote this like 80-page, like I was like writing with a pencil and paper, and I wrote this like 80-page story. I have no idea what it
I
was
love
about. I
it.
don't remember it all. And I gave it to the librarian when I was so excited to come back to school and like give it to the librarian and say, I wrote something. Can you put it out in the library? And she did. And so it's like,
I
I
love
think of
that.
that. You and I, Miriam, have talked about this a lot. I used to put on plays for my siblings where I would like make the stuffed animals talk and I would like create these storyline. Like I've always been a storyteller. I've always been a storyteller
Hmm.
my whole life.
Hmm.
And so what I hear you saying is like, there's almost, and this is just being channeled, there's this block between our inner child and who we are today. There's this block between our ability to embody like who we truly are in our purest form because of the
That's right.
trauma, like all of the things that have gotten in the
Hmm.
way. What you were describing is the woundedness, like your inner child doesn't want to be in your body because it's never been safe, right? Or
Right.
up until that
Right.
point it hadn't been safe. So you and so what I'm hearing is we have to address the shadows that are in the way of us allowing our inner child to become embodied once more. Because when we're children, we start
That's
out
right.
that way. We start out embodied. And I've channeled experiences from when I was like 6 months old where my inner child didn't feel safe, even that early
Mm,
on, right? So we in the dimension that we are currently navigating, it is common and easy for our inner child to kind of go back into the spiritual realm to stay safe, like kind of
yeah.
disassociate from our bodies.
Right.
And our
Right.
and our work in this like wounded world that we are navigating, that we are trying to heal, um, our work is to first examine, okay, what are the shadows that are in the way of my inner child from becoming embodied once more, and how do I do that? And I have found that even if there is woundedness, I can still ask my inner child. And I haven't always done this consciously, but like I'm just gonna turn on a song and just dance like I've
Yeah.
never danced before, just like silly and just be really embodied. And even
Right.
though I'm not necessarily addressing the shadow in that moment, like I'm still calling her forward, right?
Yeah.
I'm still telling
Yeah.
her like it's safe. It's safe for you to come out, right? So that's
That's
kind
right.
of what I'm hearing you
That's
say.
exactly it. I mean, yeah, you're cultivating that relationship with her. Thank you for so much for sharing that. That's what it's about. And, I had this huge revelation as I was doing the inner child work with, various clients. Sometimes three or four younger versions
Yeah.
of that person would show up, and I would tell the client, like, this is a testament to how safe your body feels that they're
Mm-hmm.
showing up in this way. That is so beautiful, But once I was able to embody my younger selves, plural, I started to notice that I had more creativity, that I had more inspiration, that I felt more imaginative and playful.
I feel
And
you like
I
more
realized
animated too. You were like more like expressive.
alive.
Yeah.
Yes, I was literally more
Yeah.
like I felt alive. And that is what this work is about for me is, people want to feel more joy, more love, more clarity, more peace, more fun. And I'm like, that's where we got to go
Mm-hmm.
because your inner child to me is the gateway to your soul, your authentic self, your soul's purpose, everything you're trying to get to. Your inner
Mm-hmm.
child is that gateway. It's the closest thing to your divinity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's why I feel that that work is so important, and I feel like it's such an honor to be able to hold space for people who are willing to do the courageous work of inner child healing because it is not for the faint-hearted. It
No.
really isn't, it's some painful shit, girl.
I love it. And what I'm also like, my guides are reminding me is before I could really just like invite my inner child to dance with me or whatever, I went through years and years and years and years and years of fucking therapy. I had
Oh
to
yeah.
like I had to let her out. I had to let her cry. I had like we cannot bypass the
Mm-mm.
shadow work, the grief, the shame, like all of the ways that my caretakers, my mom and dad, my stepmom, for all of the ways that they supported me, they also couldn't support me in many ways or parent me in ways that I needed as a deeply emotional child. And
Yeah.
so an emotional and like a child that had experienced trauma from a very young age, right? So my caretakers did their best, and yet like I had to your point, like I had to reparent my inner child, and I had to do that with the support of a medical professional, right? And
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up. I think trying to tough it out and do it on your own is not the way. And I learned through my experience as well, like you can't force it,
right.
and I feel like forcing it is part of why we have so
Yeah.
many problems to begin with, right?
Yeah.
We can't force him or her to show up
Mm-mm.
if they're not ready to. And so we really need to let go of expectations of what that healing looks like and really allow whatever wants to unfold the way it's going to.
I'm hearing
You
all
know,
we can do is create the space.
all you
Like,
can do is create the space.
yeah.
That's right. And trust. And then that, trust in the timing. You know, that's something I learned on my journey was not only how to deeply trust myself, but to trust the divine, to trust God, spirit, source, etc. And because I was always afraid of the dark,
Me
always. I
too.
slept with the,
Me too.
yeah, I would sleep with the
Literally
TV
and
on.
literally and figuratively.
Me too. Me
I was
too.
always afraid of the dark until I became a shaman, basically.
Right. And that's what I sort of realized too. Now that I'm doing this work, it's funny, right? Because now we work in the dark, so in the
I love the
shadows,
dark.
and yeah.
Now I
I mean,
do.
I would sleep with the nightlight. I would sleep with the TV on. I mean, up until very recently. And I got to a point where I started like, why am I afraid of the dark still? Like I should be able to sleep with the lights off. And I would like force myself to turn the lights off. But that was creating so much anxiety in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized one night, not too long ago, actually, that what I was afraid of most was that memories from the past that I didn't want to surface would surface in the dark.
Oh.
And it made so much sense. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had the opportunity to tell my younger self, like, I trust myself and I trust spirit. You know, I trust that nothing is going to come to me that is going to startle me or that I'm not ready for or
Yeah,
that I can't handle. You know, the saying, God never gives you something you can't handle, you know, sounds so cliched, but it's so true.
it is.
And really just relying on my faith and my trust. And that really helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It helped a lot. It helped. I sleep so much better now.
Yeah.
And, you know, even my husband commented like, oh, you sleep with the door closed now, like the lights off. Like, yeah. And it was that moment where I reminded myself, like, I trust spirit. I trust myself. Like nothing's gonna come that I'm not ready for. I was
Mm.
able to breathe. But yeah, yeah.
Miriam, I love you so much. I wish that we could just
I love
like
you
go
too.
another hour. Uh, I'm
Go
like,
on and on, girl.
I
I know it
mean,
just I was just gonna say, like, I think it's probably surprising to a lot of people that I went from being an MD to a spiritual life coach.
right.
And like I said, to me, I'm still in the healing space.
Mm-hmm.
I would venture to say that in the true healing space, true preventive medicine space. And I'm also still very much working with children, you know. So
Just in
it's
different
beautiful the way.
forms. It's like children in
Yeah,
different forms.
yeah. So it's fun the way life happens.
I love you so much, Miriam. I like, I know we are at time and I want to end with the question. This is kind of the second to last question, but what is your bumper sticker? Which is just like, what's the wisdom that you would paste all over the world if you had the chance?
Um, my bumper sticker would be you can change your mind.
Hmm. I love that so much. As
Yeah.
as the stubborn bitch that I am, I love to think that I can like that I choose a path and I have to die on that hill, like I have to die on that path. And there's something that kept me very safe about that, especially in the early part of my spiritual awakening. And I am finding I'm like, I get to change my mind.
You
We
get
get
to
to
change
change
your
our
mind.
mind.
And I mean that's what the healing work is all about. That's what, you know, the consciousness work is all about is,
Hmm.
you know, becoming more conscious so that we can make a true choice and change our minds about what we believe about ourselves, about our ability to heal, about who we are, about our abilities and our gifts and our
Hmm.
capacity to experience all that is, you know.
We're constantly, so I'm a portal guardian, portal purifier. So, and my listeners know this, for those that have like listened to older episodes, I talk a lot about the energy of portals. And
Hmm.
every single portal contains choice points. Like we get to make choices within these portals. So if we're constantly navigating portals, it means that we constantly get to make choices, which means that a portal that we just navigated 6 months ago is not the same portal we're navigating today. And we might have more information. We might be more conscious. We might have better information about what I choose. So we get to change our mind. And I think that I think that in our dimension, there's safety around the known path. It's like, well, I've been on this path.
Oh,
It's like so I used to play poker, a lot of poker in the casinos. I
okay.
used to do like, yeah, I you don't know this about me. I used to do like these tournaments and I loved it. I loved how scared men got when I was at the table because women play very differently than men in on the at the poker table. And so anyway, what it reminds me of is like when we are in like a hand in poker and we've like, well,
Hmm.
I've already put so much into it. Like
Oh,
but
yeah.
there's a point where we have to recognize that we get to cut our losses. Like that's something, it's like we are multidimensional, multifaceted beings. And if I'm, going down the shaman path and that is no longer having the same energy that it did at one point, even though I've poured so much of myself into this particular path, I get to cut my losses if my intuition is telling me that there's another path for me. It makes me think of like
Absolutely.
your medical career, my corporate
Right.
career. We get to
Right.
change our minds because at any point on our path, we get to make different choices that are aligned with our soul path, with our highest self, with our intuition. And if we allow ourselves to be so, what was the word you used? Rigid. If we become so rigid
Mm-hmm.
about who we are and these identities that we
Mm-hmm.
hold at any particular time,
Mm-hmm.
then we're no longer honoring the energy of the moment, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you were speaking, it made me remember, Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
And the shadows get a bad rep, but yeah, it's pain and things that we don't want to see in the shadows, but about ourselves. But at the same time, there's beauty in the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
The unknown is in the shadows, and the possibilities that we can't even imagine, you know. And I think that's important to highlight too, is that the shadows also represent the unknown, the what's possible, and how beautiful that is, because all that
Mm-hmm.
we know is led us to a certain point. And then you say, well, what else? And that's when you delve in the shadows, find out,
The
you know?
biggest thing, the biggest gift that navigating the shadows has given me, and when I say navigate, y'all, I have been to the deepest depths of my own personal hell, the hell of this collective. Like I have gone dark and deep. And you're laughing, Miriam, because as a shaman, you know that. Like as a shamanic studier and practitioner, like how dark it can really get. But the one
Hmm.
gift that I would never take back is that it showed me how strong I am. And not just like strength in the way that I understood strength before I started down this path. It's like
That's right.
deep warrior, spiritual, grounded strength from my ancestors, strength from my higher self. Like it is a strength that I could not have accessed any other way except to walk in the darkest parts of my path.
That's right. Super courageous work. Truly
So
courageous
brave. So do it
warrior
okay,
work.
everybody. You can do it. I'm
You can do
like
it.
I feel like this episode is like, yeah, it's the worst. Do it.
Yeah. Call upon your
Yeah,
ancestors.
for sure.
Like I often think about like
Mm-hmm.
my badass aunt who, crossed over a while ago. And
Mm-hmm.
she was so brave, so courageous. She had like 8, 9 rounds of surgery for cancer over many, many years. And she just was like a cat with like 9 lives, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And I call upon her all the time in my work,
Yeah.
to mirror my courage back to
Yeah.
me through her. And, that's our ancestors are waiting on the other side for us to ask for help.
Yep.
Often people think like, yes, they're also just around, but also
Mm-hmm.
we have to ask, right? We
Yeah.
have free will. We have to ask for the support
Yeah.
that we want and need. And they're just waiting to be
Yeah.
assigned something. So I have my grandmother on my son, my aunt with me when I need her, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and many others for different times in my life,
Yep.
call upon them.
We
Yeah,
have
so good.
benevolent ancestors, guides, angels, archangels, source God, the universe, Gaia, Mother Earth. Like we have so much
So
support.
much,
We have so much support.
so much. That's right.
Miriam, I love you. I love
I
you.
love you.
I'm so grateful for you. So I'm inevitably there will be people who want to connect with you. So tell us where you're at. How can they find you? And this will also be in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, folks can reach out to me. I'm on Instagram and I am Dr. Miriam. And they can find everything there.
Okay.
Feel free to slide in my DMs. Thank you so much. It was amazing.
I love you so much. And I'm sure we need to get you back on at some point.
Oh yeah, I feel like we have so much more to talk
We
about.
just scratched the surface and it's been
We
like
just scratched the
an hour.
surface.
I
I
love
know. I'm like,
you.
how is that possible? I
I
love you
know.
too. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. You're awesome. I
Okay, we'll
appreciate
talk to
you.
you soon. Y'all, thank you so much for being here for this episode with my dear friend, Dr. Miriam. There are so many takeaways, and I won't be able to pick just one. I love her story and her evolution into her soul's purpose. And I think the biggest takeaway that I am walking away with is this notion that we get to connect with our inner child whenever we want. We get to do the work, the shadow work that's required in order for us to embody our inner child so that we can live more deeply into our soul path, into our soul selves. It is so remarkable, and I'm so grateful for the work that she does. If you'd like to connect with Dr. Miriam, you can find all of her information in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find my information there as well. But for now, be still, my friends, and live into your impact. I am so grateful you're here, and I will chat with you soon.